GM is cutting 15% of salaried staff and shutting auto plants in the US and Canada, part of a global reorganization of the business. Paula Newton is in Ottawa in Canada. One of the plants is in Canada, and indeed, in some ways, Canada is bearing the brunt of the losses in jobs.
In some ways it is. Certainly accounts for almost half of all the job losses. But having said that, there will be 5 plants to close. They are also in Trump country, Richard. Think about that, both in Michigan and in Ohio. What's going on here? This is really ripping the Band-Aid off for GM, a Band-Aid that many people should be paying attention to, because what is at the heart of this? What's the sore? What's the festering sore? The fact that they need to shut down plants that make their lowest selling cars. And that is the issue here and why this move has been so dramatic. It's one of the reasons that, as you just showed the stock price, Richard, that investors actually like this. They say it will save about $6 billion, but it's also behind a restructuring, Richard, that takes them to more high-tech cars, takes them to zero emissions. As they say, zero emissions, zero crashes, those semi-autonomous vehicles that you and I talk about so much in terms of the technology. Having said that, this is going to have a huge impact in those communities. And of course, one of them is just outside Toronto, here in Canada. The Prime Minister Trudeau, his office telling me he was briefed last night about this, and he tweeted about it saying GM workers have been part of the heart and soul for Oshawa, that's the community outside of Toronto, for generations. And we'll do everything we can to help the families affected by this news get back on their feet. Yesterday, I spoke with GM's Mary Barra to express my deep disappointment at the closure. Go ahead, Richard.
And what about the NAFTA angle on all of this? Can we expect, do you think, President Trump to weigh in, claiming that Mexico's not losing as many jobs, and it's the plants in the US and Canada that are bearing the brunt, even though the USMCA is still to come into force, which I believe is being signed this week?
Absolutely. It should be signed in Argentina. Having said that, Richard, look, Canadian officials tell me that GM went at lengths to tell them this has nothing to do with recent trade tensions or the new trade agreement. But I think, look, if you're President Trump, if you're President Macron, if you're Prime Minister Trudeau, dare I say, Richard, even if you're Miss May, you need to pay attention to this GM restructuring. Why? The very character of the manufacturing jobs that you're trying to hold on to or trying to attract more of them will completely change, whether it has to do with trading patterns or, more importantly, AI, new technology. It's going to be quite a different world in the 10 years that we're going to see ahead of us, Richard.